Newport City regular council meeting is called to order at 6:04 p.m. Present, council members President Chris Vachon, Council Member Charbonneau, Council Member Curtis, Council Member Upper Chase, Treasurer and City, City Clerk James Johnson, City Manager Jonathan Delabriere, our DPW Department Head Tom Bernier, and that's it. Okay, next item on the agenda, additions, deletions to the agenda. President Vachon.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Charbonneau.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Curtis.
No, thanks.
Councilmember Upper Chase.
Nothing there.
Treasurer Johnson.
No.
City Manager. We're rocking. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which includes our regular meeting minutes of May 20, 2024, our special meeting minutes of May 28, 2024, our payroll warrants of May 16, 2024, and May 30, 2024, our accounts payable warrants of May 20, 2024, May 27, 2024, and May 31, 2024. It includes liquor licenses, vendor permits, and special events permits. I just want to clarify that any approval of this consent agenda regarding warrants is not approval of policies and procedures that we are still working on. It is just approval of this one-time signing off of those warrants, okay? So does anybody want to exclude anything on the consent agenda at this time? Council member?
I have one small change to the minutes, so if we need to exclude them, we bring that up.
To which minutes?
The May 20, 2024.
Okay,
I'm going to just go ahead with that.
just say what it is, please.
Yeah, I abstained on the vote regarding Newport Sailing Center lease agreement, and I'd like my abstention to be noted in the minutes, please.
Okay, so that could be updated.
Bottom of the next page. Thank you.
Is that it?
That's all from me.
So with that change, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda incorporating that change to the minutes and incorporating the entire consent agenda for approval?
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
The motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion is carried. So I'm going to sign this and the treasurer will make that adjustment. I'm just going to sign that. The warrants. Thank you.
There's two of them there, I think.
Did I sign too?
Should be two of them there.
Somebody organize it and put them back in the rubber. The next item on the agenda is the audio-visual recording policy discussion. And at this time, I would like to recognize our city attorney, Mariah Smith. Thank you for joining us.
Not a problem. I hope the council found I addressed some questions that I received from council members, and as well as some of the comments I recall from the last regular scheduled meeting. And I haven't made any changes yet to the policy per se, but I'm willing to take direction and account for what the council wants to see based on the feedback I provided you to your questions and comments from the public.
Sure. So, council members, did you all get the responses from our attorney?
I did.
Okay. Do you want to start, Kevin, if you have any questions?
Sure. I'm still, you gave an explanation on the secret recordings, and I'm sorry, I just can't understand that paragraph.
Okay. So what's intended is to not allow people, not allow employees to record other employees without people knowing a recording is happening. So the intent is that prior to recording a conversation or activity, the employee wishing to record would state to everyone, I'm going to record this conversation, or I'm going to record the activity prior to recording.
Why, I just looked at a couple other towns, and I noticed that you included Brattleboro's. Do you know how many other towns have such a policy?
I don't know exactly how many other towns have this policy. I found Brattleboro. I haven't found any others that speak specifically to employee recording policies right now. But that's the one I was able to find in state.
Do you represent other towns?
Yes, I do.
How many of those towns have one?
I haven't gone through each of my clients' policies, but I'm not aware of, I'm not aware off the top of my head of who does or doesn't have one. But that's what I was able to find Brattleboro's, and I was able to find readily.
And just thinking about it, why would you prohibit recordings which would just record what was actually said? As opposed to, let's say you have 3 people and 2 decide that they're going to make up what happened. I mean, a recording would certainly be there to tell the truth.
Right, and we're just saying you just have to tell them that you're recording it. It would still tell the truth of what was said. It may prevent people from making up the truth as well.
Yeah, if you tell them you're recording, certainly they would tell the truth. So maybe that would be a good way to go, is just tell somebody you're recording, even if you're not recording. Right?
If you intend to record, if you do intend to record, whether or not you record, you have to do it under this policy the way it's framed right now. If you don't want to record but you tell people you're recording, you can do that. There's nothing against the policy there. I'm doing that.
No, it's okay. Do you have any more comments?
No?
Councilmember?
So I'm just trying to, the only thing that I'm not seeing here, and maybe it's just because I haven't read it carefully again enough, Mariah, is the question that I would raise is where an instance where someone may be recording because they believe there's an abusive pattern of interaction with a supervisor or a coworker. Does that, in your judgment, fall under the exemption for employees making recordings of potential work safety concerns?
No, I don't think so. I'm not sure if this policy would carve out an exception to allow for someone to record behavior I'm not sure that exception, I don't think that exception is in this policy. If that's something that the council wants to include, that I will definitely draft it up, but I agree, it's not covered in this, as far as not requiring the person recording to let the people being recorded know that they are recording.
That's helpful to know that I didn't miss it. I guess I would just say, in response to that my concern is that in a situation of power imbalance in particular, where there's an employer or a supervisor and an employee who's being supervised, if there's no way for that person to counter a he said, she said kind of situation, it seems like it would be an appropriate way to try and do so. So that, to me, feels like something we ought to at least discuss together. I've been in situations where I've had abusive supervisors and didn't feel as if I had any appropriate recourse. And honestly, if I had just recorded it, it would have been pretty obvious to the whole world if I had found a way to share it appropriately that it was in fact an abuse being created.
No, I agree. That's exactly the kind of policy questions and situations that the council needs to deliberate and discuss whether or not how it wants to address that kind of situation through this policy at all. There's a potential problem that the exception might follow the rule, but that's something that that the council needs to weigh, absolutely.
Yeah, I understand. That's my only question.
Councilmember Purdy? President Fischel?
Kevin hit on one of them, just because I'm one of those people that like to go back to conversations and see if they actually happened outside my head or inside my head. But also, is there a plan to change the section 5C wording that a little bit?
Now that's one that was brought up at the last meeting as potentially abused. If that's, I believe that, like I said, I'm sorry, let me start again.
I think
if the council wants to remove that exception, I think it can. They would still be allowed to record work safety concerns, but the
I think
they would still be able to record work safety concerns. They would just need to tell anyone that is being recorded that they're recording.
I think I might
but
said
individual and sorry, I don't mean public.
No, I think I said my question wrong. 5C pertains to basically body cams for police officers. I wasn't sure if the state wording was different than ours.
Yes, I think that probably, I do recommend making that change. I think it makes it cleaner, just so there's no conflict between the state's policy on enforcement officers' body camera use and this policy. We just had a city police officer using police department issued recording devices in compliance with state policy. I think would make this a lot cleaner.
And just to go off what Rick was saying, do we need to add that, or just be saying I'm going to record this conversation be enough, or do they kind of overlap each other? Just kind of open a discussion with you. So.
Just respond.
Yes.
It's a great question. You know, my experience of those kinds of power imbalance situations is if you announce, I'm recording you, it doesn't take place. Right? At least if the person has any level of rationality at all, they're smart enough not to recommit that abuse in that moment. So I guess, you know, I would be interested in seeing language from another policy that tries to address that question. In general, I'm not negative about the policy. I think the policy is a healthy one for us to have as a city. I am concerned that there's plenty of room with as many employees as we have for an abusive relationship to begin or be carried out.
So, Attorney Smith, would you be able to work on some of these concepts for us? And then
Yes.
shoot that to us again so we can go back and forth with you, and then we can get an updated copy and we can put it on the next agenda?
Yeah, I think I can provide a couple different options to address these questions, to address what the council would like to see as far as changes. A couple options for the council to consider and even order to deliberate or vote on at the next meeting.
Okay, is that all right with you? Is that all right with you? How about you? Are you good with that, or do you want to?
Personally, I think it's a waste of time and money to have our attorneys draft a policy when it's, the worst that'll happen is the truth will be revealed in the conversation. I'm looking at section 9, the consequences, and it makes me wonder, as, again, using Rick as an example, if an employee is being abused by a supervisor, but he records it without telling the supervisor, what discipline will this employee face for recording that conversation, in addition to whatever his supervisor is doing to him? So it sounds like it's almost a no-win situation for the employee.
So could I just address, so the council did vote to have this policy drafted for good reason, and we made that call, and so the policy was voted on to happen. And so
Have them
hearing,
draft the policy, yes.
and hearing what you're saying, that is what we're asking our counselor to do now, is to work on some scenarios for us so that we can see how those questions that each of our council members have can be vetted or weeded out. Yeah.
And do you think, Kevin, you have concerns with section 9, the fact that it could include termination?
Well, my question is, in the example where a supervisor is unjustly going after a subordinate, if this person, the subordinate, happens to record the conversation to say, look, this is out of control, this guy is horrible. Now this subordinate is going to face a discipline up to and including termination for trying to vindicate himself.
Yeah, so the council has full discretion over what that discipline would be depending on the facts presented to the council. Yeah. Oh, you mean, the subordinate, you mean the supervisor could institute discipline, is what you're saying?
Well, I don't know if the supervisor would, but under this policy, the subordinate would face discipline for recording a situation that was completely not his fault and it was the supervisor out of control or whatever. And it got me thinking, when you record a conversation and I was a police officer, and virtually all my interactions were recorded. You take it, you file it, you forget it. It's only when there is a question of what happened, you go back, you look at the recording. And agreed, we initially said, look at drafting a policy, but I don't see anything in this policy that will help carry the truth forward. But thank you for trying.
Yeah, no problem.
So are we good with letting the process continue and we'll focus on these questions?
It's okay.
Can I add one more?
Of course, you may.
So section 9, with room recordings may be shared. Is there a way to make it like a hierarchy of who gets shared first and where that would go to next?
Yeah, so we want to protect some employee rights as well. So these recordings can be shared with the employee supervisor. If there's work safety concerns that they were recording, they want to show their supervisor, hey, I found this. If they have legal counsel regarding facts relevant to the recording, they can share that recording with them. They can share recordings with their union representatives.
I guess the question is there a way to say that they should go to union rep first, supervisor second, city manager, besides legal counsel, because we can't take that away?
Yeah, I think it depends heavily on what the recording is and what it's relevant to. If it's of the city manager, maybe sometimes. There are situations where the union representative would be probably the first person they would share it with. Or sometimes, like with work safety concerns, it would be the union rep and their supervisor. Are you thinking along the lines of a hierarchy?
Yeah.
Which would you? So how would you list these out? I suppose in priority, if you'll get the.
Well, I guess like you said, it does depend on the severity of the recording, but union rep, supervisor, city manager.
Do you think we should have them share with all of these people? Or sometimes we won't have to share it with certain of these people.
That's a good question. Because the more eyes on it, the more people seeing it.
Yeah.
Is there a way you can draft that up so we can look at it with some ideas?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry if that
Yes.
wasn't clear enough, but thank you.
No, that's fine. No, these things shouldn't be rushed and they should be thought through thoroughly.
I'm good.
Madam Mayor. I have one other small thing, which is that section 6 is missing. So we just need to renumber or something to avoid confusion.
Absolutely.
I think section 6 is one of the ABCs.
And looks at the loss.
Okay, good? Everybody good? Okay, Counselor, well, we thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to the next draft.
Yeah, thank you all, and I hope we get a good product for you to consider.
Thank you very much.
Good question.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the 3-acre permit update. And on that, city manager, you are going to?
So this was an update prompted by, first in conversation with our Department of Public Works Director, Tom Bernier, about kind of the new 3-acre rule through stormwater. There were some residents on Memphremagog Views and Wildflower Way that automatically got a letter from the state of Vermont stating that they were basically in violation of the stormwater permit and needed to address it. The city, not including Memphremagog and Wildflower Way, has 5 sites that are listed on the state's website for 3-acre. One is the recycling center, Gardner Park, the wastewater treatment facility, the Newport City Elementary School, and Prouty Beach. So those are our 5 sites that are over 3 acres. The state, through ARPA money, is providing up to $50,000 per site to work on some of this engineering that we're required to do. So, we just kind of wanted to give an update specifically about Wildflower Way and Memphremagog for those folks not to worry that we're addressing it as a municipality, but also to the council that we are working on our sites and we'll be applying for that state funding to help cover the cost of that engineering.
Any questions?
Good.
Thank you.
course.
Thank you for that. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the proposal for the Newport Master Plan update with an anticipated vote. And Mr. DeForest,
Good evening, everybody.
thank you.
So as you guys recall, back in, I think it was February, we signed an MOU together for Newport downtown development to manage the process of getting proposals for an enhanced city master plan. So we did send out the RFP to 15 firms since then. Of those, 8 did not respond or said they were too busy. 4 could not help us as it was out of their scope of business or they were way out of our price range. 2 tried to, team up with others so they could complete the RFP in total with all the hit points that we wanted, and weren't able to find partners to fulfill our needs. And we did receive one solid proposal from one firm that chose to team up for part of the work in order for them to hit all the hit points on our RFP. So our economic task force and Newport Downtown Development has reviewed the proposal that we got from VHB, which is included in your packet this evening. And we feel it's a really strong proposal and are recommending it for your approval tonight. These are some of the reasons that the task force agreed that this was a great proposal. 1, they developed a 2018 waterfront and downtown master plan. Because of that, they know our city really well, and they can build off that original plan and build from it going forward. They also did the work on the 2023 hotel feasibility study for Newport. They have experience developing enhanced master plans for municipalities in Vermont that have successfully implemented TIF districts. Those include St. Albans, South Burlington, and Winooski. They teamed up with JS&A, which is a firm that has experience in analyzing if municipalities can make a TIF district work, which is part of our request. And they also addressed everything we asked for, which includes the following: assessing our housing needs and recommendations for the type, quantity, and appropriate locations to meet those needs. Analyze identified downtown development sites and waterfront plaza to provide specific actionable recommendations for their highest and best use. Provide recommendations on how to capitalize on the downtown economic development benefits of an expanded airport to benefit local businesses and the vitality of the downtown area. Identify priority public infrastructure, including utilities, transportation, public buildings, and open space that will create a strong foundation in support of new private investment in downtown growth. assist in increasing the city's financial capacity through the identification of viable funding resources for investment in Newport, and assistance with the creation of a successful downtown TIF district application. Provide rendering and visuals that support the updated master plan. And lastly, not least, they fell within our budget. So with your approval tonight, we would kick off their work this week. They've agreed to meet our September 30th deadline, which would allow us enough time to submit a TIF district application if we choose to do that. Over the course of the next 4 months, all stakeholders will have an opportunity to be part of the process and sharing their input for Newport's future. If you approve this evening, we would want to sign the contract tomorrow so they can begin their work this week in order to hit our timelines.
Council, any questions?
I just want to ask my fellow council members, there's an obvious conversation going on here because I'm the director of Newport Downtown Development. I don't see a potential for financial gain. We're doing the work managing this MOU as we talked back in February without financial compensation. So it's my intention to participate fully in the conversation unless somebody wants to raise a concern about conflict of interest.
Okay.
I'm good.
Everything's good.
Okay, I like what Dave said.
That's okay, you're not recognized. So, any questions at all?
Just clarification, that's, the money is coming from NCDD. It's already, we already have. Well,
The money is in your budget.
That's correct.
Right.
We've already got it
Yeah,
allotted.
exactly. Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
Okay, so, on that note, may I have a motion to approve the master plan as presented? And you said you need this signed tomorrow?
You're out, aren't you?
No, I'm here.
Okay.
I just want to know, so
Yeah.
otherwise I was gonna, okay.
Yes.
And authorize the mayor to sign it, and if for any reason the mayor is not here, the president has authority, of course, to step in and sign it. May I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions? Yeah. Come on up, we're gonna be real formal tonight.
Laurie Grant, Newport City resident. So I just had a chance to kind of briefly go through this afternoon. And what I want to know is in the project timeline, it does state that there's community outreach materials and a summary of community outreach and input gathered. So is this project going to allow for open discussion of community members? I mean, I understand that, you know, we've got a lot of great people already involved, but will there be any community meetings at all as we move through this process?
Okay, I'm going to say yes, but I'm going to ask Mr. LaForce to elaborate.
Yes, definitely. That's part of the VHB's process is they'll have group meetings with the public, and those will be happening through the next several months.
And as we have other community forums, we could always incorporate as well, you know, into those community forums. Any further discussion? I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion is carried. And I will see you tomorrow. Next item on the agenda is the wastewater treatment facility discussion. Just to get this started, it's a discussion for the council. If anybody has any questions and I open it up, please wait to be recognized and speak through the mayor. Okay. I'm going to ask for Mr. Bernier, you're going to, who wants to lead this, the city manager or
started if. Yes, we're still.
Who wants to start?
I can start if you.
Okay. That's fine. Are you okay with that? If, okay.
So this item was put on the agenda as kind of the first public conversation regarding the wastewater treatment facility second sludge spill that our community has had. This was the result of an employee error. It was a different employee than the first time. Both Tom and myself have asked that if any employee opens that valve, because it is a manual valve, that they basically babysit that valve. They are not to leave that valve until the job is done and it is closed. So that's kind of the first direction in terms of procedures that we implemented immediately. The second piece to this is Tom has been working with the state and Vermont Rural Water on ways to implement an automatic type system so that there is less human interaction in chance that something like this could happen. So I don't know how much further you want me to get. We are in communication with the state. All the proper notices were issued. This was a much less release than the first time. First time was roughly 100,000. This was 10,000. Again, still a release, still something that we need to address and make sure that that's on our radar and gets fixed. Again, this is kind of the first public conversation meeting that we've had since it.
Right, and that we're just starting, and, so Vermont Rural Water Association, I know you reached out, thank you for that. When I spoke to the commissioner, are you talking to them about the training as well, technical
Both.
training and
Yep.
support? That is most important.
Correct.
Because that was the top priority for.
Technical training, support, education, classes, and then the infrastructure and facilities themselves and what we can do for modifications.
Okay. And will you stay personally on that conversation to continue with the commissioner, so I can step out of that one and you
I
can?
haven't met with the
Well, I'm
commissioner,
going
so
to
we can
introduce you,
yes.
so will you run with that?
I am meeting with Liz, the executive director of Rural Water, next Friday.
Okay.
She is coming to Newport, so we plan on having a meeting at that point.
Okay, so I will connect you,
Okay.
and then if you would do that,
Sure.
that would be very helpful, and then keep the council up to date on that. Okay, and that's Commissioner Batchelder. But I will connect you
Okay.
with that. There's a lot of questions, but do you want to start? Anybody, council members, do you have some questions here?
My first questions is there an automatic way to fix it? It looks like that's being looked into, and is there trainings available to make sure that people make mistakes, but training to help those mistakes not happen as much? So it sounds like that's also being talked about. Those are my two.
Chris, took my training question. Was there training after the first spill? Like immediately after?
Not at the rural water
Well,
level.
right, we don't, but was there training, maybe,
To
you
the
know?
city employees at the wastewater treatment plant, does anybody know if there was training immediately
I
for them?
don't know off the top of my head.
You don't?
Do you know if there was?
What was the answer?
No, they don't know.
And then what about testing of the river? Testing of the water quality?
Do you know, testing of the water quality after the first spill?
We've done everything the state has asked us to do.
Right, we're just trying to.
I mean, the release, once it hit the river, it was gone.
Mhm.
To test the river would be done at this point.
One more.
Mhm.
Is there any testing at the beach?
Is
We
there any
test at the
testing?
beach every week.
Say it again, I'm sorry.
We test at the beach every week.
Thank you.
Once the campground's open, we test down there.
Okay.
So is the process you're describing with Rural Water Association, is that the equivalent of an audit? Because I'll just name, my concern is, what else is a potential pitfall that nobody's thought of? So I'm just wondering if part of our process is to bring in some kind of an independent person, inspector, agency, something, who can look at all of the operation and say, here are the problem points that we see. And training is one thing, but we can only train to the things we've identified and not to the things we haven't guessed about.
So I can speak to that just a
Please
little
do.
bit, and I might ask for Tom's help.
Sure.
So my understanding is that, and Tom, correct me, 20 years, the facility, every 20 years, there's major upgrades? So every 20 years, we have the state come in and say, this is what we're required to upgrade, right? And kind of look at the entire operation. And Tom, how far are we? 4 years away? 3 years?
We're already initiating it.
We're initiating it now. So we're at that 20-year mark to look at our facility, and really look at that infrastructure and dive into the weeds of what do we need to do to upgrade this. Some of that's gonna be looking at automation, right? How do we change manual stuff to automated alarm systems in place, and to try to really prevent some of them.
If I could just follow on to that for a moment. You know, with the first spill, my reaction was, okay, you know, we blew it, mistakes happen. With the second spill, I felt like, okay, this was entirely avoidable. We knew exactly what the problem was, and still somehow we had a problem and missed it. And I guess, you know, it seems to me that somebody somewhere ought to be able to come in and do an independent walkthrough of the facility. Maybe not announced ahead of time. I don't know how you would do such a thing. To just say, here's some, I'm not looking for a gotcha. I'm looking for someone who can help us by saying, you know, here are 6 problem areas we've identified that you might want to address before 3-4 years down the road when you do this 20-year review. So I don't know what that would look like because I'm not an expert in such things. I assume someone out there is someone who would do that.
Let me bring it up to Liz next Friday and see if, yeah, I
Thank you.
think that's a good idea.
Thank you.
Councilman?
Tom, do you want to respond? I'd love to hear what you think about it.
Yeah, I just want to add to it. You know, I'm not going to make light of what happened. We're all busy. Obviously, the procedure is really they open a valve and they get busy doing other things. It takes quite a while to fill the tank, and you got busy and forgot about the valve. I'm not going to make light of that. We have initiated that we are going to have an alarm to warn the guys when the tank's filling. And I'm also looking at the facility. I've already started digging it. We're going to put in an overflow pipe. There's an outside tank there that hasn't been used in 30 years more. I don't. It's been a long time. Holds 50,000 gallons, and it's going to dump into that open tank. And when it comes up to a certain level in that tank, it just goes right back through the plant. It's going to recirculate right back through the plant. So at this point, and I should have that done this week, we should never have another overflow into the drainage catch basin that is right outside that door. I mean, had that basin not been there, it probably would have spilt on the lawn and out in the wastewater plant, but it wouldn't have gone right to the ditch from that catch basin. So that's the initial plans that we're taking right now to correct that.
Any more questions?
No, I don't think so.
Councilmember? So I have a couple, because I'm looking at the daily tasks that were provided, and I just want to figure out, was there training, because the first task right off the top was that, you know, you go through, you open the valve, you open the gate, and then you close the valves once complete. So was there training prior for these people, or these new people? Were they not trained? Were they trained? I'm just trying to see where the breakage happened in the human error.
There's 4 guys that work at the wastewater plant.
Okay,
They've all done that procedure. We've had that press for, I'd have to guess, between 4 or 5 years, and have never had a problem. Till recently, the guys are getting busy. Again, I don't want to make light that it happened.
no, right, I'm just
but
trying to see where
we're
it
trying to
happened.
multitask and do other things while we turn the valve on, and I'm going to go off and do this. Somebody might have come to the plant, distracted them, and forgot about it. So as Jonathan had said, we've implemented, and I was there this morning checking where we were opening up this ditch to do this work. that he was standing by that valve. I don't care if it takes an hour, 2 hours to fill the tank, he's to stand by that until it's done and he closes it. That's the procedure we're taking right now until I put this overflow pipe in. Again, it happened, unfortunately, twice, and it had never happened prior. So as far as training, you're opening a valve.
Well, I'm talking about training on the procedure. I mean, it's very clear. It says you open it, you close it, and once it's complete. So I just want to know if these people were actually trained or
They've
maybe
all done.
they've all been trained. And then my understanding, correct me wrong, is that somebody came in and found it and shut the valve on the first one. Is that correct? There was another employee who came in and saw it, and so what would have called that employee there? Do we know, or was it just a shift, or like why all of a sudden was somebody there to shut it? Do we know?
I don't recall. You're talking the January one?
Mhm.
I'm not sure. I have to think back on that, whether somebody goes to that plant every day. Whether it had gone all night, is what I'm thinking, if I remember right, and you came in and one realized the valve was open. It was left open.
Okay. And on the second one, do we know how that one was
That
shut?
happened during the day, they were there, so,
Okay.
And I believe they got called to the water tower, correct?
yes.
There was an issue with.
Okay.
And again, not to make excuses, but we had the water tower down for a cleaning, and trying to get it back online, we had a problem with the float system in there, so it wasn't filling the tower. I couldn't start my testing, which is 2 series of tests before I could put the tower back online, so the boys were having issues on the water system, and again, we got called away, we're gonna have to just adapt to say, okay, you're gonna stay there until it's done.
Okay, so I'm pleased that you're gonna follow the commissioner's idea of getting hold of the, what is it called, water rule? And you'll go through a thorough discussion with them to see what they recommend for training and support. And let's say there is a decision to go forward with this automatic valve shut off. Is that going to be more have lackadaisical employees because they're gonna go, oh, it's gonna automatically shut off, or is there gonna be part of a training process there as well on how to shut it, watch for it, who's going to check it, so you have that discussion with them as well?
My initial thought is that this is backup to manual, right? That
Right.
We're still gonna do manual valves, but this is that backup in place, that safeguard, in the event the employee does get called away. The system, piping and automatic implementation would help solve that, but I think there still needs to be procedures in place to make sure you hit your punch list of all the tasks that you
I think I need my list.
need. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, any further discussion here? Are there any questions? Okay, I'm gonna ask you, please, speak through me, come up, identify who you are, okay? Okay, go for it. Oh, wait a minute, I want a picture of this one.
Yes, Madam Mayor, Chris Roy, Newport Daily. Just a couple of housekeeping questions. It was mentioned that the testing had to be done, I think you said either weekly or daily. What is that exactly, are they tested for, and who's doing the testing? Is that the city? I just want to clarify that. I think I know the answer.
Okay, so let's take one question at a
Okay.
time. Mr. Brennan, do you know that?
We test for E. coli.
Okay. And you wanted to know?
Is that daily or weekly?
It's weekly.
Weekly,
And
okay.
that's more or less because of the birds and the cove of the beach. The current really doesn't go in there, so the water sits there, kind of stagnant. I mean, the lake's a clean lake for the most part, but in that little area, the water doesn't flow out of there like you'd like it to. So we've got geese down there, ducks. That's why we test it.
Tom, do you get any blue-green algae down there?
The guys have been kind of trained through MWI, I believe, to observe for the green algae. And if they see it, or if somebody sees it along our side of the lake, we'll put signs out.
And what agency of the state comes up every 20 years? Is that Agency of Natural Resources, or what part of the state is doing that?
What agency at the state says, okay, you're 20 years up, it's time for us to check? Is it A&R? Is it, do you know?
It's the wastewater.
Wastewater systems themselves.
And we, just so everybody knows, back in 2007 is when we actually had our last upgrade at the wastewater plant. But that takes a few years of, we're doing some preliminary studying, engineering, and, you know, the whole process of getting that plant for its next 20-year upgrade. So we're actually initiating that right now.
It's probably, but I'm not sure, but I think it would be the Agency of Environmental Conservation under A&R. I think that's who they're probably dealing with.
Agency of Natural Resources. Okay. It was mentioned that you're going to have an alarm system put in. So it's going to be like an audible alarm that neighbors will call if they hear it go off? Is it going to, as I discussed with the city a couple of weeks ago, that's going to go to their cell phones? Or what is that going to look like at this point?
Do you know how the plan would work? Okay.
I believe it
yes.
goes through the mission system.
Yes.
And I'll let Tom, I don't know much about that system, but I'll
Okay.
let.
Most all of our alarm systems are what we call our mission system, which is off a cellular service. All the guys have it on their phone. They'll get alarms at home, wherever they are. So that's how this will be set up.
And it was mentioned that you've had that press down there for some time. Is there a name of the press, or what exactly is the press that was referring to down at the waste plant?
The sludge
The
press.
sludge. Oh,
Just-
okay. I'm sorry. I was thinking press like in Roy.
What is the timeline?
Well, I think the city manager said he's meeting with pretty like soon.
Yeah.
He's already started the conversations. The conversations have started next week. You're meeting.
Next Friday.
Right. So
All right.
this is a priority.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your
Oh,
time.
thank you. You did good. Appreciate it. Thank you. Hi.
Larissa Hammond, Newport City resident. I had a question, was the Clyde River tested? Because I heard about something in January, and so I have a couple questions. How
Okay.
many spills have there been this year? Because I was aware of just the April one, and then the one that happened after that, but then I heard there was a January one?
Okay, so let's find out. Do you know how many spills there were this year?
Just the two.
Just two. So I think we just have the dates wrong. So
Oh, okay.
I think that's what it was. It was just
Okay,
the-
yeah, because I heard January, and I was like, I thought it was April.
Yeah, right. It was. It was.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I was just concerned if the Clyde River was tested, and the whole reason why is because I was at the farmer's market with my kids, and my 10-year-old was chasing ducks or running around or something, I don't know, slipped into the Clyde River and got and this was right after it all happened, and someone was warning me about it, and that's when I started looking into it. And saw horrific pictures of human excrement floating in the river, and so freaked me out pretty bad. And I'm just wondering, especially since a lot of kids who might not have access to clean water sources around here, especially with a splash pad maybe not getting put in, I'm just kind of thinking, was that water tested, the Clyde River?
Okay, so let's.
Yeah,
start.
sorry, I was.
No, it's okay. I know you're trying to put it all together
I'm trying to
because
put
it's
it.
been for a couple
I didn't
of months.
prep. Yeah.
It's okay. So we did not test the Clyde River itself.
No, we did not.
Okay, so that was not tested.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, as a mom, that was really horrific. I had to bleach his clothes, and I was worried he was going to get something, maybe.
Right, and that doesn't mean, we don't know what, after discussions that are going on with the state,
Mhm.
this is just asking them and going back and forth with them and trying to find out what protocols need to be put in place. So we don't know what they're going to say on that. And it's a good question to start that discussion, okay?
Especially since like we're renting like paddle boats and stuff in Gardner Park, like if someone slips into the water, what is the quality of that water?
Understood, understood. And those are great questions.
Okay.
And so that will be, everything that's brought up here is going to be incorporated in the
Okay.
conversation, but I want it to be done with our city manager so we can be sure that all of the questions are going through one source, and then he can provide the council with that, and we can share that as opposed to one person talking to somebody, one person talking to somebody. I want to get us all together so we can have a good plan here, because this is a priority, and everybody is jumping in on it, and I thank them for that. But I want to make sure that we deal with this.
And I just wanted to make one
Sure.
final comment, Madam Mayor, and say that when my children were really young and I could not afford childcare and I was stuck in an apartment all day, it was very depressing to not have a place where my kids could go play. And so I just want to speak on behalf of parents in town who might not have good transportation to go to Willoughby or other places where there are clean places for the kids to play and cool off in the summer, and just ask the council to consider providing clean water play to all children in the community, not just the children who can commute somewhere else.
Understood.
So that's it.
Understood, and that's a point for Mike Brown, right? Our rec director. Thank you. Thank you very much. Items?
Conrad, City of Newport. I have a couple of questions. One of which is, how does an employee who's doing a task like that is an important task, and we know there are consequences from it not being completed successfully, who would call an employee away when they know that the task they're doing is one that requires vigilance? That's my first question. My second question is, we at the city have been paying a lot of money to an external person who appears not to be on the books. I'm not quite sure how that works, but we've been paying a lot of money. How is this happening when we know there are consequences for that? And my third point has nothing to do with that. I swim in this lake all the time. Don't worry about the quality of it. It really is not that bad. There are a lot of us who swim there regularly all year.
Okay.
So,
Okay. So I think we want, two questions. One I kind of think was rhetorical because it was kind of answered, but if you want me to go, we can go back to it with who would call somebody and, right, and I think what was said is somebody got called away, or maybe they already had assignment. But we can go a little bit more into it if you know the answer to that this morning.
I don't.
Who would have the authority?
I don't have any.
Well, how about that? Who would have the authority to call the employee away from that task of opening and closing the valve? Another employee or only their supervisor? Who would?
I'm not sure exactly what happened that day.
No, we're not concerned about right now what happened that day. We're trying to find out the process. So if I were there and I were the employee, would I have to stay there until you called me away, or could John, city manager, call me away? Could a council member, like, who would that person respond to?
Jason runs the facility.
Okay, so there's a foreman, and so pretty much it would be a protocol. It would be a hierarchy for them to. Okay. Second question, if you could repeat the second question for me, was on the consultant.
the second question, let me get you on camera. The second question was, we're paying somebody who's a sort of consultant, a sort of employee, a lot of money, and yet we've had 2 major spills. We all have questions as residents about that employee, that process, because nobody seems to know anything about it, and it doesn't appear to be on the books anywhere. How is this still happening when there's allegedly a high-paid person?
So was the consultant overseeing this prior to this incident? Was the consultant called in when this incident happened? Do you know?
No,
Okay. Maybe we can find out, it's like, kind of see where that falls in, so we're going to look into that one.
So just if, when.
Well, just, yeah, just kind of see if in fact, they were there, they knew they had done anything prior, any kind of oversight or training, what were they retained to do on that process? And when it happened, were they called in? Where do they fit into this pretty much? And just kind of shoot the council an update on that. Shoot me like an update and we can address that. Okay, thank you. Ms. Bjorn.
Jennifer Bierling, Newport. So I've got a few questions. The first is, there's discussion of the new system that's going to take place where if there is a spill, that it's going to basically be funneled back into the sewer treatment plant itself, so that it will never make its way into the river. So with that new system in place, which Mr. Bernier said he's going to have done in the next couple of days, I wonder if it's necessary to spend the money on the new alarms or whatever, because if it's a self-curing system, is it a wise expenditure? That's the question.
And so let's respond. So do you mind? I really want to make sure that. So that is definitely, nothing's been authorized or approved. This is just discussions, and those are major questions that the council has. Okay, so if this is a fix, this is something that might be a good idea, but do we need it? What is the purpose of it? Are we doing it just to satisfy possible maybe penalties or something from a city? We're going to hear from the state and get their input on this, and it will be brought back here. Okay, so we all had that same thought and question, so good. So that's going to be part of the questioning.
Okay.
Okay, and I also will know after Mr. Bernier does his project if it worked, right? And how it works and what's going on, so that could be shared with the city manager's discussion with the commissioner as well. Okay.
I also keep hearing discussion of the training. My understanding of opening and shutting a valve is that there's a circular lever, or whatever you want to call it, and you turn it one way to open it and you turn it the other way to close it. So I guess I'm a little confused about all this idea of training. If my understanding of the operation of the valve is misplaced, then please correct me, but that's my layperson's understanding of it.
Right. And I'm sure there's more technical issues to it, but mine is, when I said training, I meant like, do you actually train the people and drill it into them? That you have to open it, you're responsible for shutting it. Do you do it with one hand, two hands? I don't know what the weight issues are. That would be the super.
Could Mr. Bernier answer?
Yeah, that's where I'm going.
Okay.
But I just wanted to say, when I was talking about that, it was specifically, I get it, you open the valve and you close the valve, but I wanted to make sure
I'd
these
like to hear
people
from Mr.
went
Bernier.
through this training process.
Yeah.
Mr. Bernier? Could you repeat the question? Is it just a simple open, spinning like a red wheel and undoing the
Pretty
red?
much.
What, okay.
That's all.
So is there a weight issue with it? How are they, is it,
No, you open the valve and you close the valve.
okay, so it's just logic.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. The next question I had, the January spill, was that a union or non-union employee?
They were both union.
They were both union employees.
Both union
spills.
employees. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Sure.
Hi.
Hi.
Krista Santapola, Newport. I just had a consideration, like a point of consideration really. Because like if the system really gets updated like every 20 years, that's a pretty big gap in between. And if you're talking about implementing an automatic system, there's been released from the EPA and the NSA this year that there's been like a number of cyber attacks on wastewater facilities, and that is expected to increase. And like ideally, Newport's like small potatoes, but we should like consider the worst case scenario and be prepared for that while we're like having this conversation. So I just wanted to bring it up.
Thank you.
Just from listening to the other questions, so like I know that when I have to do things for my swimming pool, I have to stand and wait. Now I recognize it's a totally different thing. But when they open that valve, is there a certain amount of time that they're supposed to be there? Because I certainly understand the concept of having to do a lot of things. So opening the valve and then 20 minutes later you go back and close the valve and maybe you get called away. But is this, and I'm not trying to get into the weeds here, but is this something that's like pretty standard practice? Like every time it's the exact same amount of time? It doesn't sound like it, but that's why I'm asking the question.
That's a technical question. I could not answer that.
I don't know the exact time. It's sludge, so depending on the thickness of the sludge, it may take longer sometimes than others.
Okay. So it's dependent upon the situation. Okay. Well, I thank everybody because this was the initial discussion, and we are going to have a community forum. President of the council has asked, and we have asked the city manager to reach out to Mike Brown to get us a date, and we will be having a more thorough community forum on this as we get more information. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the bike pedestrian grant application letter of support with an anticipated vote. You're up.
Okay. So this is a V-Trans bicycle ped grant. It is typically, or let me back up. So I had brought this up to staff probably a month or so ago and said, looking at the waterfront master plan, which talked about our recreational bike path that currently goes from the Canadian border down to where it meets in the city at Crabby Drive and then follows through to the gateway. And then it kind of stops. So I was asking staff if we were to look at adding new routes or extending that bike path, where would we want it to go? The hospital just got a grant, or just got an award for being a bicycle-friendly hospital. There was a lot recently through Newport City downtown development about biking to school and how do you fix your bikes, and so really looking at our community as how do we increase that bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. So what I would be asking the council to do would be to apply for a scoping study grant. Typically, V-Trans gives a dollar amount between $40,000 to $60,000 range. There is a 20% match that we would build into the fiscal year 26 budget. So the budget that's already after the one that we approved. The deadline, I believe, is June 14th. So that's when I'd need to get the deadline. I think it's the 14th. Let's double check. So, yes, June 14th, yeah. So we don't have another city council meeting between now and then. So I would like to ask the city council if you would be okay with myself and staff working to put together a grant application and then getting a letter of support from the city council that we could have Mayor Sullivan sign once it's available to look at applying for a scoping study to look at our bike path.
What is the deadline, June?
June 14th. They typically, V-Trans says a scoping study will take roughly 2 years. So whatever match we would decide, we would split between fiscal year 26 and fiscal year 27. And again, just looking, there'd be public meetings, but where do we want to, do we want it to stop there, or do we want other places? Do we want it to go up to where the water tower is on the Derby Road, because there's currently no infrastructure there? Do we want it to continue around this side of the lake? Where do we want, again, right now it's kind of point A and point B. And how do we increase that network?
Okay. Question?
I could just by way of kind of point of information, I think this is a great idea. And the focus that you're trying to bring to it, Jonathan, seems really fabulous to me, to kind of focus on the downtown core and where we wanted to go from here. And I just the point of information is Newport Downtown Development just received a $200,000 grant from VOREC, the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economy Collaborative. And 10% of that grant is actually to be dedicated to a study of bike circuits, like gravel biking circuits that we can create between here and North Troy. Because what we're trying to do is complete a series of circuits that encompass or surround the entire lake to match some work that they've been doing on the Quebec side of the border. So I don't think anything you're talking about, it can only enhance that project that we're working on. So I think it sounds great. And one other piece of information is that Newport Downtown Development is in the middle of a modest contract with Bevan Barber Campbell to look at what it will take to set us up. She's the one who helped the hospital receive the silver level bike-friendly business award. And we're working toward trying to do an application for downtown Newport. And so if this were in the works, it would certainly go a long way toward helping with the certification for bike-friendly community.
That sounds great to me.
It's a good idea.
Okay, so make sure I have the motion you want. Can I have a motion, please, to authorize the city manager to explore and proceed with a bike pedestrian grant application, and for the mayor to sign the letter of support?
So,
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, comments? Further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion is carried. Okay,
Thank you.
go get them. I'm not a very good microphone. Just throw that out there.
I'll write it, you decide.
That's right, okay. Next item on the agenda is the personnel policy. This is a discussion. This discussion was requested by Councilmember Charbonneau, and we had moved it for a while to gather some further information. And so we're going to allow this discussion now to take place. This is based, we have an approved personnel policy, and further discussion, as I said, was requested. Do you want to give us some update, or would you like the council member to begin?
I have Kevin, but I can certainly in the meantime.
Okay, sure. Okay.
Well,
Unless Kevin wants me to go first.
I mean, we kind of kicked the can down the road for about 3 or 4 meetings. You had said that you were going to talk with some of the employees, because I was under the impression that this was not a widely well-received policy. Perhaps you can share what you had gleaned from some of the employees.
Sure. So I probably got a chance to talk with roughly half of the employees. We're still working on the union side of things, kind of behind the scenes. But really, there was 2 reoccurring themes that kind of emerged in talking to all of those employees. The 2 topics were the overtime after 8 hours versus overtime after 40 hours a week or 80 hours every pay period. And then...
These were employees that you spoke to?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yep. And then the piece that the grievance or progressive discipline piece had been pulled out of the existing policy. Were the two big pieces that I had documented.
Any discussion? Councilman, any discussion?
I confess that we've gone so far beyond it now that I'd have to go back and reread it carefully. My recollection, this was all taking place just before I became part of the council. And I remember one meeting where we had some conversation about it. And the question that I had then, and I apologize because I should have been better prepared for that conversation, was particularly around the grievance procedure. And so if others who were part of the conversation could help refresh my memory, I would be grateful.
Sure, that was explained to us, our attorney was here, our city attorney was here, and explained the legality of that and the recommendation.
So that part was protected by attorney
Yeah,
client
and
privilege.
why. So I can have the attorney send you contact the attorney and ask them to address your question on that. Yes.
If I may.
Sure, of course.
I spoke with some of the employees that were involved in the negotiations. When last they saw the contract, when it went up, the language for the grievance was still in it.
Could you tell me when this was, so I can follow you when you spoke with them?
When did we pass policy yet? Right?
Oh, wait, so this is passing the policy versus you said that we're involved in the negotiations.
They
so
were involved in
two different
negotiations.
things, so.
The policy that we voted on, that was presented to the council, and it was passed in February 20th, was not the same policy that they had submitted or worked on. And in fact, some of the revisions never mentioned removing the grievance policy. So when it came back from the lawyers and was voted on without the safeguard of the grievance policy, it was actually kind of shocking to the people that had worked on the policy. And never got a straight answer who removed that policy, because it was not the people that worked on it.
Right, but the people who you say worked on it, I mean, those aren't the people who determined the policy. There's some group, right, but I just wanted to be sure, so.
Okay, yeah.
That's what I'm trying to distinguish.
Yeah, and I guess I'm trying to distinguish who determines the policy and remove that procedure.
So that was, as I said, our attorney spoke to us about that here at the council, and I'm going to, I think what we need to do on that specific part, because it seems to be something that everybody wants to hear again, is that we need to bring that attorney back in to discuss that with us here.
Madam Mayor,
Sure.
it is very simple. The policy went to the lawyers
Correct.
with the grievance in it. When it was presented to the council from the lawyers, it was either the lawyers or you, there was no grievance policy in it.
Correct.
Okay.
And our attorney was here and explained the reason that it was not in it.
So the attorneys removed it.
The attorney explained the reasons.
Then I guess my other question is, just perusing some of the other policies in the various cities in Vermont, like Brattleboro, which was referenced in our recording policy, Montpelier, Stowe, St. Johnsbury, and these are just random towns. They all have a grievance policy. How come we don't? I know what the lawyer explained,
Okay, so there you go.
and I know what the employee said, they're not happy with it.
Okay.
So, do the lawyers work for us, or do we work for the lawyers?
The lawyers work for us, giving us advice for the best policies of the city.
Okay. I guess then you've answered my question. The lawyers were presented a policy with a grievance. Without some input from us, they would not have removed that policy.
No, that's
grievance
not
policy.
what was just said. What was just said, not, first of all, there was no presentation in my understanding of any policy to our attorneys. They've been working on this for pre-us. And so the bottom line is, they gave us advice, we heard it, and we took a vote. You voted against it, but other people voted for it, and the policy passed. You asked for us to have a discussion to revisit it, and we are. But making statements like that are not, first of all, there is no group of employees who get to negotiate and do this, okay? It is the city authorized person, people who do that. And we have attorneys, and we listen to their advice, and we had a vote. But I want to go further, so I don't want this discussion to end. Any comments?
We passed the policy in February. Kevin voted against it. We spent 20 minutes in executive session with the attorney speaking to Kevin about why, what, when, and where. I have no issue with revisiting it, but I don't know of any company that asks their employees to create a personnel policy. And I believe, speaking to Laura Golden, is what you just said, this policy had been was being worked on for quite some time. I'm not aware of any personnel policy presented to the city.
Yeah, my big concern with it and why I voted no was the lack of a grievance, or at least some sort of tiered level of progressive discipline system. That was my concern. If we were to revisit it, that would still be my push to add that back in.
And so what I'm suggesting is that that point, okay, we should speak to our attorneys and see again why they made certain recommendations, and we should hear that. But I don't think that that's a legal information we need. We need legal advice on that.
So are you suggesting next meeting, possible next?
Have our attorney on that issue here. So that could be clarified, because we have,
I would welcome it.
because we have another council member who, I don't know if you were here. You may have,
He wasn't voting.
right. It's like in Costa Rica. No, just kidding. But so if you would make, and ask Marilyn to be here for that, since she is the person who dealt with that. Okay? Good? Good? You good with that? Councilman?
No,
Okay.
but it doesn't matter, I guess.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is city assets update discussion.
So the mayor asked me to put together a list of who is a personal car, who is a city issued cell phone, and who currently has credit cards. So for personal cars, the police department currently has 3, fire department has 1, and Department of Public Works has 1.
Does that include the chief's car?
It does. Yep. You're saying the 3?
The police chief's car?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's the police chief, The K-9 unit and the school resource officer are the three that make up that. Fire is also the chief's car, and then Department of Public Works Director has a take-home truck. So that's it for personal take-home equipment. For phones, so far I know that the fire chief did have one, but now there's currently no cell phone there. It was John Hollamart that had one. Travis has a city issued cell phone, Tom and myself. And then credit cards, there's 4. The PD has 3 of them, and then the city manager has 1. So I'm still working with Travis to figure out if 3 is needed, if we can go to 1 for the police department. I know Mike Brown as recreation is constantly using the city manager's card. He probably accounts for, I'd say 90% of that usage. So I was talking to Mike, and maybe it makes sense to get recreation their own card, so that we can keep some separation between those departments and cards. But yes, that's who currently has the existing system, how that makeup is.
So they have their cards, and you may not know this yet, and we may have to look into this. Do we have a written policy that says they can charge X, or if they can't use that card without authorization for over $1 amount, or do we have any?
No,
So we should look at.
in the purchasing policy, it lists authorized agents that are allowed
Right.
to make purchases on behalf
Right.
of the municipality and what those different
And that's on
tiers-
next week's,
Correct.
right, okay. So that would be included in there, okay. And then, of course, that we track if somebody leaves the employee who had a card, we remove the
Correct. Yep.
card. What about ability to charge at stores without a card?
Correct. So I haven't got through all of them yet.
Right,
But there are some, well, I'd say 98% of everything that we get is invoiced. The very small amount that either we can't get an invoice for, is where that card is used. In terms of what stores we can actually charge to an account, so far I found 3. Pick and Shovel, Sticks and Stuff, and South Bay, the Napa store. So I'm working to figure out who is on each one of those accounts per department and kind of see what that process for POs looks like, and working through that. Those are the 3 that I found so far.
okay. And then we can run reports if necessary to see what, if there's discounts being given, or how that's accounted for.
Yeah, most things are just, you see the store charge, and then it's due as an invoice. So you can charge to the account, then that store kicks us an invoice via either snail mail or via email.
Okay. Okay, and we'll sit and look through.
Yes,
And-
we get all of those invoices.
Okay. Any questions? Any questions? Councilmember? No? Okay. Thank you for that. Next item on the agenda is Fire Department Personnel Matters, Potential Executive Session, 1 VSA Section 313A1. So may I have a motion to enter into executive session to discuss fire department personnel matters in accordance with 1 VSA Section 313A1 and to invite the city manager into executive session?
So,
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and motion is carried, and we are in executive session. Okay, we're out of executive session. No action was taken. May I please have a motion to authorize the city manager to explore employment status and to take appropriate actions to ensure the safety of the fire department and the public?
Is Jim taping? We're
Oh,
not
Jim.
back on the record, right?
didn't even realize he was. Don't tell him that. I praised you like you had no idea. And you missed that. It was.
But it's on camera.
Okay. Continue.
Okay, we're out of executive session, no action is taken. So following up on the great praise I just gave the treasurer, may I have a motion, please, to authorize the city manager to explore employment status and to take appropriate action to ensure the safety of the fire department and the public?
So moved.
I have a motion, do I have a second? Min?
What's that mean?
It means you're gonna be safe. It means that the city manager is authorized to take care of this personnel issue.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion is carried. Thank you. Next item on the agenda. City litigation, potential executive session, 1 VSA section 313A1E. Sit tight, wait for 1 second. May I have a motion to enter into executive session to discuss city litigation in accordance with 1 VSA section 313A1E?
So moved.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and we are in executive session. Okay, we are out of executive session, no action taken. Pardon me. They all went for ice cream, they did go for ice cream. Okay, ready? The next item on the agenda is comments by members of the public. Please, once again, speak through the mayor. Members of the audience are reminded that members of the press are present and that these recordings are being recorded for current and future broadcast over the city's cable television channel. Members of the audience are further reminded that Newport City Council meetings are for the purposes of allowing council members to conduct city business. City council meetings are the only time the city council discusses, deliberates, and decides upon city matters. City council meetings are held in public to promote transparency and accountability in government, but are distinct from public hearings or town meetings in that they are not meetings of the public. Members of the public shall be afforded a reasonable opportunity to express opinions about matters considered by the city council. To conduct orderly and efficient meetings, I request the public's cooperation and compliance with the published guidelines when participating in these meetings, and I thank you very much. Ms. Lyons.
Separate issue, if you have anybody online, I don't think they're back on.
No, we never broke out to different rooms. Nobody's online.
Excuse me, I'm taking this because.
Okay.
I left it here. Pamela, City Newport resident. All of us who have water piped into our homes received this with our water bills. This is a sheet of information. It's data Consumer Confidence Report 2023. It has a question. We're all supposed to take photographs of the piping that comes into our houses. It's something to do with our water meters. It's also because the EPA is concerned about lead piping, and that's reasonable. And there's a lot of information here about lead and the impact that it has on the human body. This suggests that if anybody has questions, they should come before the city council, and then tells them that the city council meetings are the first and third Mondays of the month, and they should show up at 6:20. Now, frankly, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I'm just doing this for information, but this piece of paper triggered a video that went viral around the city, which was about the spill. I'm sorry Tom isn't here because I would have asked him about it. I think he's already
You seen it?
disappeared. Yeah. It went viral. It got conflated with the spill, the lead, and the potential of the police moving to somewhere else. So it was pretty chaotic, but I would like that you do something with this, and I'll now give it back to Clark, which is where I gave it in the first
So
place.
who issued this? Do you know, Jim?
No, that was just,
Do we know who?
it came from Tom. I think that's an annual thing he has to put in there.
All right, so Tom would have to fix it. I just want to know who we need to get it back to.
I read it.
Okay.
Could I take a look at it?
Sure.
Is this for
Yeah,
me?
that was for you. Or if you don't need it, we can leave a note for Jonathan to. Are you keeping it?
If you want it, it'd come in a water bill, right? I think I have.
Yeah, I think there's still some in the box downstairs.
So I just want to kind of give a note. Thank you. Ms. Fiona?
Jennifer Gearling, Newport, Vermont. I had raised my hand during the recording policy, but I didn't get recognized. So the attorney is no longer with us, which is unfortunate. I was curious whether or not municipal employees or management falls under the Whistleblower Act. And if it's simply federal, which I think it may be, if Vermont has its own rendition of the Whistleblower Act. And if the answer is yes, I'm curious if the protections afforded by any Whistleblower Act, whether it be state or federal or whatever, if the city's policy is going to conflict with that. So, I mean, if you guys leave the clause in that they can't record, and it's a whistleblower situation, you could have problems there. So I tried to raise my hand, I mean, I did raise my hand to ask this question when the attorney was online, but I was not recognized. In response to the discussion about the personnel policy, Mr. Charbonneau stated that he discovered that Stowe, among others, had a grievance policy in there. Stitzel and Page represent Stowe. So you might want to do a deeper dive on that one. I also was a little bit concerned about the fact that Mr. Charbonneau's question as to who removed the grievance policy was not answered. I would like to see transparency from my city officials. It's a pretty simple question. Who took it out? I doubt, though I can't say for sure, that the attorney simply took it out on her own without authorization from the city. As the council is aware, the charter gives the mayor the ability to unilaterally interact with the city attorney. The legal invoices are pretty redacted, but on January 19th, under the heading Personnel Policy Review, something was forwarded to Mayor Sullivan. One assumes it was the personnel policy. Then Mayor Sullivan had an email interchange with Attorney Mahusky. On February 2nd, Attorney Mahusky had a 1.1 hour telephone call with Mayor Sullivan. On February 5th, there was an email exchange between Attorney Mahusky and Mayor Sullivan. On February 26th, there was another phone call between Marilyn Mahusky and Mayor Sullivan, and the charge associated with that was 2.1 hours for a total of $420. So it would appear that the mayor had full understanding that this grievance policy was being removed from the policy in advance of the vote. I just find it disturbing that the council wasn't made aware of that as well. Like I said, I would like to think that we're going to have transparency from our city officials, but it seems to be lacking.
Thank you for your alleged interpretation of whatever you understood. Next item on the agenda. New business. President Fashawn?
Memorial Day was absolutely beautiful. Thank you to everybody involved, rec department, public works, police, fire, everybody. I mean, for a wonderful event. So.
Thank you for being there. Marching. Councilmember Charbonneau?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Upton Chase?
One item, there's on June 19th, Wednesday night, Newport Downtown Development will be having our annual meeting. It's open to the public and free of charge, and I want to invite all of the council members and anyone in the public to come. We will be focusing a significant amount of our energy on the conversation about kind of long-range economic planning for downtown Newport. We have a panel discussion planned with Mayor Tim Smith from St. Albans and Chip Sawyer, who is the Economic Development Coordinator in St. Albans. And we don't yet know who, but someone will be with us from the Vermont Housing Finance Agency for that evening. So I'd love to have you all come and be a part of that. It'll be at East Side, 5:30 to 7:30. I'll send you all a note as well, so you have it on June 19th.
Thank you. That sounds exciting. Councilmember Curtis?
Ditto to Mr. Fashion's statement on Memorial Day. I did not march, but I was there.
Yes, you were.
Sadly, I do have new business. When I decided to run for this seat and was elected, I knew that I would come under attack, which we all have here in this room, from the public. I understood we'd be called names, which we all have by the public. But never, ever, ever did I think I would be attacked by one of my colleagues. And this has happened. It's sad, it's discouraging, it's maddening, and a whole bunch of other words that I can't say in public. I encounter many people during a week, and they ask me about certain things. Some of them I can answer, some I can't. This I am absolutely going to answer, and I'm going to answer it and tell you all, whether you're here or at home watching, what has happened. It's disgusting. Since our last meeting, I have learned that one of the members of this very council has encouraged and in fact directed the city official to initiate a criminal complaint against me.
Yeah, that would be me.
The source of the information that has been made known to me are beyond challenge. This happened, and I understand that this city councilman has essentially been badgering this certain city official as late as last Friday to take action. Now, before I express my deep disappointment and outrage, I want it known that I have not done anything to merit a criminal complaint or even an investigation. A matter of interest to the city councilman has apparently to do with an act that we took together as a city council. I did nothing but vote with 3 of my colleagues here in favor of a matter that this councilman voted against. I did nothing wrong, not even close. This is nothing short of some cheap political stunt by people who continue to be interested in hurting the city and disrupting the work of this body. I am not going to get into names, not yet. You will know the names tonight. I'm not even going to identify them at the moment, but you will know their names. Rather, what I'm calling for now, I demand, after I am done speaking, that this councilman identify himself once the mayor has recognized him. I further demand that the city councilman explain to the public what it is that I did that merits that I be criminally prosecuted. I also demand that if there are persons who have been advising, assisting, or encouraging this city councilman to take this action, that they identify and explain themselves. Now, about the outrage part, I have to say I was speechless to learn that this had occurred. The best I can make out of this is that the councilman wants to hurt me personally. Initiating a criminal complaint is no minor matter. The issuance of a criminal complaint would create for me a criminal record. It would just by its issuance harm me in the community, severely damage my reputation, and bring dishonor to me and to even my family. This is what I get for serving the public as a member of this body. So I demand transparency, as we've been hearing from the public. Bring it on. This juvenile, amateurish, political gutter sniping needs to stop, and stop immediately. And that starts with this person explaining himself to the public as soon as I am done speaking. I have been proud to see members of this body begin to work together the past year without all the dysfunction we've seen in the past. Even, for example, like tonight, there are positive things happening all around us. And now this. It's embarrassing. It brings everyone down. It's negative. It tarnishes the city and our community. And I am furious about it. I'm speaking to my attorney about what I'm going to be doing next. But in the meantime, once you are recognized, I demand you come forward and explain yourself. Shame on you. I would like to reserve the remainder of my time for a bit later, Madam Mayor.
Okay. So I want to speak now as part of the new business for this week. I want to briefly address an exchange that occurred concerning Councilmember Charbonneau and Curtis. As I understand it, Councilmember Charbonneau hand-delivered to Police Chief Bingham various Vermont statutes concerning the criminal impersonation of a police officer. That same day, Councilmember Charbonneau used his city email address to send an email to City Manager Delabria, directing the city manager to forward a criminal complaint concerning Councilmember Curtis to Orleans County Sheriff's Department. Although I am not aware of Councilmember Charbonneau's precise concerns, I understand that Councilmember Charbonneau is seeking an investigation into whether Councilmember Curtis violated Vermont law by acting briefly as both a city council member and city constable. As you know, Councilmember Curtis resigned from his position as city constable last week after Councilmember Charbonneau raised concerns that the constable position was incompatible with his position as a Newport city councilor. Councilmember Curtis was city constable for approximately 30 days. Councilmember Curtis did not take any action as constable before resigning from office. Councilmember Curtis did not receive any compensation from the city for his brief tenure as city constable. As your mayor, it is my job to ensure that laws and city ordinances of Newport are enforced and that city officers faithfully perform their duties to the members of this community. I take these responsibilities seriously. This type of infighting and abuse of law enforcement resources is not in the best interests of the city. Councilmember Charbonneau has no authority over the city manager or the police chief. More importantly, he has no right to seek a criminal investigation on behalf of the city. As a private citizen, Councilmember Charbonneau has the right to access law enforcement just like any other member of this community, but he cannot do so in his official capacity on behalf of the city. If he continues to have concerns about Councilmember Curtis's very brief tenure as city constable, I invite him to pursue those concerns as a private citizen.
Madam Mayor,
Yes,
may I respond?
you may.
I won't go into the details of this investigation. Let it be known, I did not, nor do I need anybody's advice in criminal matters. Much the same way, for a quarter of a century, I enforced the laws of the state of Vermont. And for the latter half of it, I was actually a sergeant and I directed the troopers. When I perceive a criminal complaint, I notify the authorities. It is important to note that an investigation is not a trial. That's what the investigation does. They see if the elements of the crime are there. If there's not, then there's not. The reason I sent it to Travis is he is the law enforcement officer for Newport. I said, Travis, it's a conflict of interest. You're going to have to forward this up. It went to Jonathan Delabria. Jonathan, it's a conflict. You either go to the state or to the sheriff's department. I won't go into the details of the elements of this because I will say that for the sheriff's department. But if there was nothing there, I wouldn't have made it. I just can't go into further details. But if there is nothing, then there is nothing.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor. Few more words. Mr. Charbonneau reached out using his city email address. Very important. And I want to correct the mayor. She said that I really didn't do anything as constable. I want you to know the only thing I did was nothing. I am speaking with my attorney. My attorney has advised me to file a lawsuit against Mr. Charbonneau. Everything he did was inappropriate. I want Mr. Charbonneau to know what comes with a lawsuit. All cell phone records, calls, text messages, emails, any and all communications you had in a time period specific with multiple individuals. With a lawsuit comes depositions, interrogatory, discovery responses. I will be contacting and filing a complaint against you with the State of Vermont Ethics Commission. This is beyond anything that I could even fathom. While this is more than a serious situation and I cannot speak about law enforcement, I can only imagine that they have found this laughable as it is an unwarranted claim. Mr. Bingham nor the sheriff are doing anything with this matter. That's what I've been told about your scant claim. And I believe I know who your cohorts are. For example, in particular, Miss Beerling. At the end of our last meeting of May 27th, you were out back of this building for about a half hour speaking with Miss Beerling at your truck. I have a great picture of it, by the way, and also video from the city cameras. There's really nothing to speak about at our last meeting because 95% of it was in executive session. What you did is beyond belief, unbecoming of an alderman, and abuse of power, embarrassing to the city, and warrants your resignation. The city residents, voters, taxpayers deserve a much better representative. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, may I respond, please? Madam Mayor.
One moment. You're done.
Pardon me?
You're done. You responded, you finished. Correct. That's what you said, right? I just want to make sure we're done here. Ms. Fiona.
Jennifer Beerling, resident, Newport, Vermont. I could tell by the way that you were glaring at me through your entire speech that you have decided that I had something to do with this. I had nothing to do with this. And Madam Mayor, I had nothing to do with the Proton email. And I would urge you, Mr. Curtis, to keep in mind that when you say the things that you have said this evening and implicated me by name, that is slander. So I eagerly await the depositions. I eagerly await the discovery. I eagerly await it all. I have nothing to hide. I had nothing to do with it.
Thank you for your comment. We're still on new business? Treasurer Johnson?
No.
Old business? President Sean?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Charbonneau?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Curtis?
Well, I might as well, since I'm on a roll, sure. I have kept this document for many months and have regretted to even read it, but I guess now is the time. I want to bring us back about 20 years ago. I had a debate with the Planning Commission over an issue, and I had felt that people that were on my side weren't being listened to. At the end of that long issue, there was an opening on the Planning Commission. I submitted a letter of interest, was interviewed, recommended, and appointed. The sole reason at the time for my interest was I felt it was absolutely vital that every person in the public be heard. And that happened within a short period of time, as well as when I was a member of the Historic Commission and a member of the Development Review Board. every single person was heard. It's also very important to me now that everyone in the public is heard, whether out in the public or sitting here. And I'm going to say something that I've never said in my 17 years of serving this city, and it saddens me. One person, and one person only, has broken my love for listening to the public. And my issue is just with this one person and no one else. Yes, Ms. Berlin, I'm looking at you. Out of approximately 4,600 residents in this city, it is just one, and I have identified her, Miss Jennifer Berlin. Miss Berling had already started her misguided adventure just prior to me getting here. In the beginning, she identified as a resident and an attorney and exclaimed points of order, interjected when not appropriate, etc. Lately, this hasn't been the case, but it got progressively worse. Even Miss Berling being asked to leave the room due to her behavior. Miss Berling has set some records, none of which she should be proud of. She has filed the most open meeting law violations of anyone in the city ever. She has filed the most public records requests of anyone in the city ever. Miss Berling had a fictitious name on Facebook, something like Bunny Bubblebutt or something, thinking that no one would know who she was, all the while with continuous negative comments about the city. Miss Berling has attacked the mayor in many ways. Letter to the editor, Facebook post on Front Porch Forum. Here, Miss Berling was out campaigning for someone that recently ran for an alderman seat, making false claims about the mayor, which are and were libelous and slanderous. Some of those people that Miss Berling spoke with contacted me and told me exactly what she said. Most every person I come in contact with has asked me what her problem is. The answer that I give them is that Miss Berling repeatedly has told us that the city, this council, doesn't know what we're doing. She feels it necessary to keep us in check because no one else is, and she feels compelled to do it. She even wrote an article in the Chronicle about why I do what I do. Miss Berling recently, on Front Porch Forum, has said that I and the mayor have filed complaints against her law license in order to silence her. I'm not trying to silence anyone. I'm not responsible for Miss Berling's actions. Only she is, and she is the one that needs to be accountable, especially as an attorney. I can only speak of my complaint. And yes, I did file a complaint against her law license upon observing too many to count complaints, interjections, outbursts. I filed a complaint in September or October of 2023. She referenced this on Front Porch Forum. The complaint has not been dismissed and is still under investigation, as well as some others. The main reason I filed a complaint was due to the fact that Miss Berling found it necessary to not just knock on this council room door while we were in executive session, but to wail on it as if to try and break it down. Thank you to the Newport Daily Express and Chris Roy for taking a great picture of it. Miss Berling's actions then and now are not very becoming of an attorney. Her constant negative comments. If they keep up, I will be asking the mayor to eliminate public comment as an agenda item. There is no Vermont law that stipulates an agenda item for public comment. It is a courtesy. Public comment is allowed only for agenda items requiring a vote. It has come to the point, sadly, that I not hear anything that Mr. Berling really has to say, sort of like hearing the boy who cried wolf. She needs to comment on almost every agenda item. Most always has something negative to say under public comment. While everyone absolutely has a right to be heard, it is not necessary, common, or even normal to feel the need to speak on every item. No one else in the entire city does. And seeing that Miss Berling also identifies as some sort of educator, she should understand this. And it's sad that all I hear when Miss Beerling speaks is Mrs. Hagmeyer. Now, for those of you who don't know who Mrs. Hagmeyer is, she is the last known teacher for Charlie Brown and his friends. And she can always and only be heard saying wah, wah, and wah. Thank you.
Councilmember Upper Chase?
Just one item I'd like to request that that we revisit the advertising of the fire chief position at the next council.
That is on the agenda.
Great, thank you.
In that with additional other
Thank you.
areas, okay. Treasurer Johnson?
Nothing.
So I have something I would just like to say. I had received a query from Canada regarding a missing headstone that may have been related to Newport. And I reached out to Commissioner Shinet. I asked him if, as the commissioner, if he knew how to deal with this or if he would respond. Well, I have to tell you that he went like above and beyond, okay? And he sent me this email that said, "Good afternoon, Mayor Sullivan. The case of the lost and found headstone has been solved. Through my contacts and research since the 3rd of May, I was able to get Mrs. Barnes the information that she requested. A friend of mine in Canada was also able to come up with some family history as a bonus. The stone belongs in an old cemetery up in Canada and is expected that the stone will be returned to that location. Thank you for the referral." So Dennis Shinet of the East Main Street Cemetery. So that was like a great story. Like it was just someone reached out and said, "I don't know who to reach out to, but I'm looking for this headstone." And he went and he researched it and he sent it back to Canada where it belongs. So, last item on the agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
At 8:35.
Madam Mayor.
Next meeting.
I'll just read this up in the next meeting.
Oh, sorry, I take that back. So moved, okay? May I, so I asked, you have to watch me. Okay, can I have a motion to set the regularly scheduled council meeting for June 17, 2024?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion is carried. Now,
What of a clarification, Mayor, why are we posting the position of fire chief? Or why are you posting, I don't live in...
we are not saying that we are saying that we are putting the question of that on the agenda, and we will be discussing the fire chief position.
Okay.
Okay. That's why I just clarified, I know that the council member was really asking for us to discuss the position and what's going on, so that would be on the next agenda. Now can I have a motion to adjourn the regular meeting at 8:36? I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion is carried. Thank you, everybody.